You probably have a phone within arm's reach right now. Maybe it's in your pocket. Maybe it's on the table next to you. It's small, silent, and always connected. We barely notice it anymore. But the telephone didn't begin this way. Before it became something personal, before it followed us everywhere, it was a heavy object, fixed to a single place, built for a very different kind of communication. The original idea behind the telephone was simple: carry a human voice across distance. Early telephones were large, mechanical, and fragile machines. They were not designed for comfort or convenience. These devices were fixed to walls or placed permanently on heavy wooden desks. You didn't own a phone. A building did. Homes, offices, and institutions shared a single line. Making a call was intentional. You planned it ahead of time. You waited until the moment felt necessary. Calls were often short, sometimes shared, and rarely private. When the call ended, the connection disappeared completely. Silence returned. Communication did not linger. It arrived, and then it was gone. Communication wasn't constant in those early years. It was rare, and because of that, it carried weight. Telephones weren't background noise. They didn't follow people through the day. They interrupted it. A ringing phone meant something specific. It demanded attention. Calls were often shared. Others could hear them. Privacy was limited, and silence returned quickly. When the call ended, there were no messages waiting, no missed notifications, no lingering presence. Communication arrived, did its job, and then disappeared. For decades, this was how people experienced long-distance connection: brief, intentional, and easy to leave behind. Over time, the telephone began to change. Not all at once, and not dramatically. Improvements came slowly. Rotary dials replaced earlier systems. Calls became easier to place, and mistakes became less common. Devices grew more reliable, more standardized, and slightly more personal. The telephone was still fixed in place, but it no longer felt experimental. It became something people trusted. Phones moved closer to daily life, from shared public spaces to private offices, from walls to desks. The technology stayed mostly the same, but expectations quietly shifted. The telephone was no longer a novelty. It was becoming a routine part of how people organized their day. Eventually, the telephone entered private life. It stopped being something shared and started becoming something personal. Phones moved into homes, into hallways, kitchens, and living rooms. The sound of a ringing phone became part of everyday routine. Being reachable began to feel normal. Slowly, quietly, expectations changed. Not answering a call started to feel noticeable. Silence began to mean something. The telephone no longer interrupted daily life. It blended into it. People adjusted their schedules, their habits, and their behavior around the possibility of a call. Communication was no longer rare. It was becoming familiar. And familiarity changed how people lived. Then came mobility. Phones began to leave the house. At first, they were large, expensive, and limited. Early mobile phones were not convenient. They were heavy, awkward to carry, and far from reliable. But they changed something fundamental. Communication was no longer tied to a specific place. It followed people. Calls could happen outside the home, on the street, in cars, and between places. Being reachable stopped being an exception. It started becoming an expectation. The telephone was no longer part of a location. It was becoming part of the person. The real shift was not size. It was purpose. Phones stopped being defined by voice alone. They became tools for many parts of daily life. Cameras replaced separate devices. Maps replaced printed directions, messages replaced short conversations. Slowly, the phone absorbed other objects. What once required several tools began to live inside a single device. We stopped asking what phones could do. We started assuming they could do everything. The telephone no longer waited to be used. It stayed with us. It remembered things for us. It organized time, stored relationships, and shaped attention. We don't just use phones to communicate, we rely on them to manage everyday life. The telephone did not disappear, it transformed into something much larger. What began as a single voice, traveling through a wire, slowly became something constant. The telephone changed how people expected to be reached. Silence stopped feeling neutral. Not answering began to feel like a choice. Over time, communication stopped being an event and started becoming a background condition. We no longer prepare to connect. We assume connection is already there. The telephone did not simply evolve in form, it reshaped habits, expectations, and daily behavior. The next time your phone vibrates, pauses, or lights up beside you, remember where it started. This was the telephone before today.